You know how as soon as you think of a certain car, you tend to always see it at certain places, you tend to see more and more of it. So when I started driving the Volvo XC60 and I started liking it, I started noticing more and more of the XC60s around the streets of KL. And that got me thinking that, hey, it's actually a really popular car. And after driving it for about a week now, I can understand why people like it so much. If you've been following this channel, you probably would have noticed our review of the XC90. And if you've watched it, you would probably know that I actually really liked the XC90. It kind of blew my mind on how refined it was, how much power, and how spacious it was, and how good of a car, of a family SUV it actually was. Now the XC60 actually builds on all of that, but it also loses on things like the double panel glass, it loses stuff like the air suspension, and yet it still offers quite a bit more. Because the XC60 is significantly lighter than the 2.7-ton XC90, it actually offers better performance and better range as well. If you can't already tell, I'm also blown away by the XC60. I really don't want to be talking much about the design of the XC60 besides the fact that it's obviously a very handsome car. Now, the XC60 comes with Volvo's R design package, which gives you stuff like this black grille over here, as well as more black panels around the car, as well as a more aggressive front bumper, as well as a more aggressive rear bumper, and 19-inch wheels, which are obviously good looking, but I do think that the wheels could be perhaps bigger with lower profile tires, because if you look at the wheel well over here, it looks like there's still a lot of space to be filling up. So I think bigger wheels, lower profile tires would make the car look more aggressive, even though it might somewhat sacrifice on comfort. Now, from the rear of the car, you'll also notice that the exhausts have been placed behind the rear bumper. Now, this is basically a design trick to distinguish PHEV Volvos, plug-in hybrid Volvos, from their internal combustion siblings. So if you see a Volvo on the street and you do not see any exhaust coming out of it, it's either an electric Volvo or a PHEV Volvo, like the XC60 you're seeing over here. Now, powering the XC60 T8 Recharge, which is the full model name of the car that you're seeing over here, is basically the same powertrain that you'll find in the XC90 T8 Recharge. So it's basically a 2-litre turbocharged, 4-cylinder turbocharged engine that by itself makes 317 PS and 400 Newton meters of torque, which is quite a lot of power for a 2-litre engine. It sends its power to the front wheels through an 8-speed gearbox. Now, at the back axle, just like the one on the XC90, there's an electric motor that further contributes 145 PS and 309 Newton meters of torque. Now, wait for this, guys. When these two systems, when the engine as well as the electric motor are working together, they produce an amazing 462 PS and 709 Newton meters of torque. That's a lot of power. That was once upon a time, that was supercar territory. But right now, it allows the XC60 to accelerate from 0 to 100 in just 4.8 seconds. Now, that is just about half a second lesser than the XC90, which obviously weighs much more than the XC60, as I've touched on earlier. However, top speed is limited to 180 kilometers per hour, because in 2019, Volvo decided that it was just going to limit the top speed of all of its cars in terms of in name of safety, which is what Volvos are known for. Now, on the topic of the electric motor, it is powered by a 18.8 kilowatt-hour battery, which is bigger than the 11.6 kilowatt-hour battery with previous generation XC60s used to offer. Now, this allows an electric-only range of 81 kilometers. Now, we didn't really see 81 kilometers throughout our our test drive of the XC60, we did see about 50 plus 60 kilometers on the streets of KL. Now, this is significantly better than the 45 kilometer electric only range that previous generation XC60 used to be capable of. There's undoubtedly a very impressive powertrain. When the electric motor and the engine are working in unison in hybrid mode, the XC60 is capable of using just 1.6 liters of fuel for every 100 kilometers that it travels. This is obviously a hugely efficient powertrain, absolutely no doubt about it. Now, the interior of the XC60, I've got to say this, that usually I do not like too much black around the interior, too many plastic panels around the interior. I just never used to like that. But as soon as I started driving these Volvos, I actually kind of appreciate it. Not the panels, but because of the way that the Volvos have been put together. I mean, there is absolutely no hollow point around the interior of the XC60, and neither was there any around the interior of the XC90 either. So in that sense, I think the interior of the Volvo XC60 has been very well put together. And consider this, that Volvos have been assembled in Malaysia since the 60s. So I think there's a lot... Hold on, there's an animal on my finger. So I think there's a lot that other car makers such as Mercedes and particularly Mercedes and BMW can learn about the manufacturing process of assembling cars in Malaysia, because Volvo obviously is doing a splendid job at it, and they've been doing it since the 60s, so there's plenty of know-how already. The interior of the XC60 is basically called charcoal grey with charcoal open grid textile seats, upholstery. So it's a combination of leather together with this charcoal grey fabric upholstery. Now, when I first saw this, I wasn't sure how I felt about it. But after some time now driving this car, I think they're actually very handsome seats. They're really good looking. Very nice combination of fabric as well as leather. Besides being good looking, they also offer tremendous support. Both seats are electronically adjustable. Besides that, they also have memory function. One of the key things that I really like about Volvos is I'm able to actually control the passenger seat by just clicking on this function, and get this, I can adjust the passenger seat from my controls over here if I have this function turned on. Now, if I have kids jumping around the back seat and I want to offer them more space and such, this is a very handy feature to have. If I turn this off, I get full control of my own seats, but if I want to adjust the passenger seat, just turn this back on and I can adjust the passenger seat. I think this is a brilliant feature to have. I'm not sure why more car makers didn't think of this. Splendid. Now, besides that, the XC60 also features these things over here, this trimming. Now, Volvo calls it the metal mesh decor, which is short for decorations, metal mesh. Now, this looks great, adds a touch of sportiness to the interior of the XC60, but I wish it was something different, because it really glares. Now, when you have your panoramic roof open with the sunshade put aside, withdrawn, so, and when the sun is just shining right at the top, now it tends to glare from this chrome trimming and it tends to blind you. So in that sense, I think this is obviously doesn't do it for our country. Probably great in Scandinavia, but not so much in Malaysia. So I think something different, perhaps a wood trimming like that in the XC90 would be better. But that chrome trimming all around the interior, yeah, I've had too many glaring incidents, so to speak, which can kind of disrupt your driving. Now, besides that though, the interior has a 15-speaker Bowers and Wilkins sound system. 15 speakers with 1100 watts. It's just fantastic. Now, the XC90 gets 19 speakers This gets 15 speakers, still a bloody, orchestra on wheels, man. So it's just the sounds. I'm a huge fan of the sound system, as if you can't already tell. You also get this 9-inch portrait style screen, which is underpinned by an Android operating system. You of course get Apple CarPlay as well as Android Auto. What I find really weird is that even though you get this charge panel over here, this charge pad over here, you still have to hook up your phone to actually use Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, which basically deems this charge panel redundant. So kind of weird, but yeah. Then one of the key highlights of all interiors of the interior of almost all Volvos are this Auraforce crystal gear knob. Looks amazing, and it's basically like having a chandelier in your house, because everybody that comes into your house and sees the chandelier, it'll wow them, right? This has that same impression, creates the same impression for all passengers that step inside. It's a very, very cool looking gear knob. Now, this is a diamond cut starting key. Now, if you want to, it's not a start button, but a starting key to start and turn off the engine. You just gotta turn this to the right, and it's turned on, and the same sequence to turn it off as well. Now the car also comes with drive modes. Now this is where things get a little bit let's say sophisticated and distracting. I think it's the same complaint that I had about the XC90 as well, because almost all controls are located in this touchscreen system over here. So for example, let me just turn on the car. So for example, if right now I want to adjust the air conditioning controls, there's nothing over here for me to adjust the air conditioning controls. Instead, I gotta press on this, and I have to, these are my air conditioning controls. So it's a two-step process, which can be kind of distracting. I know that after a while you tend to get used to it, but it could be more simpler, like the systems on, as I said before, a Lexus. I think Lexus does it perfectly. Very good balance of technology as well as old school buttons. That's very important in my books. Now, the other thing that can be quite distracting as well is using the drive mode selectors. Now, if you want, it comes with 4 driving modes, but assuming that you are over here in the home page and you want to select your drive modes, you first have to select this gear knob thing, this gear button over here, and then you go to driving. Only then do you have all your 5 driving modes. So it's basically essentially a 3-step process. While you're driving, you're trying to do this as well, and basically counterproductive to what Volvo actually stands for, which is safety, right? So this, in my books, is not very safe, because it involves taking your eyes off the road to actually delve into this. Now, the one thing that I really like about this system though is the Google Assistant, the voice assistant. So let's say if I just want to, if I want to go back home right now, hey Google, how long will it take me to reach Ara Damansara?
By car, the trip to Damansara is 42 minutes.
I think it's brilliant. It's if I log into my Google account, it can give me a lot more information, such as, hey Google, find me a good restaurant to eat in Ara Damansara.
Okay, the Zyutki restaurant, Ara Damansara, 21 kilometers away.
So it gives me
navigate there.
A list of all the restaurants that are available in Ara Damansara. So, and I really like Google Maps. I prefer Google Maps over Waze actually. So in that sense, I think the Google voice assistant is just brilliant. I think that's one of the good things about the interiors of a Volvo. So now let's check out the boot and the back of the XC60, but before we do that, I'd just like to apologize if you're hearing a lot of wind noise, because it's a very windy day. It looks like it's about to rain, so it's quite windy. So if you're hearing some wind blasts and all, yeah, it's not by intention. Anyway, at the back here, let me just point out the exhaust. This is what I was talking about earlier, that you simply cannot see the exhaust, even though this is a plug-in hybrid. So technically there's an engine, which means there should be exhaust. And there are exhausts, they're just neatly tucked away at the back over here. Now, besides that though, the power tailgate, and I'm not sure if it's just me, but the power tailgate of the Volvo XC60 as well as the 90, the speed at which it opens and closes is significantly quicker than some of the other cars. We also have a Mazda CX-30 over there, and the opening speed of the CX-30 is just irritatingly slow. Might just be me. Anyway, there's one thing that I have to complain about, the same complaint I had about the XC90, is the tonneau cover. Now, the tonneau cover of the XC90 was a little bit on the flimsy side, which is kind of sad for a car that costs close to $500,000 ringgit. Now, the XC60 costs over 355,000 ringgit, and it too sort of has a very flimsy tonneau cover. Now, putting it in place is actually quite easy, you know, or you could simply retract it. You want to put it back in place, no issues. But the thing is, if I were to do, see, it just, and then sometimes what this means is, if you were to go over a speed bump or a very, one of those potholes that Malaysian roads are so well known for, it kind of tends to do this, which while you're driving and you suddenly hear this, if you have a weak heart, things might go bad. But in terms of boot space, it's obviously generous. You get some storage space over here, which is where we place the charging cables. Now, you also get this spot over here, which would nicely fit the charging cables actually. So, no complaints about that. I really like these hooks over here, which means that it's easy to hang, you know, all your tapaos and ramly burgers and chicken rice or whatever it is. So, or teh tarik. So, in that sense, it's very well thought out, very well put together, as well as quite spacious as well. So, what else would you want in an SUV? So, in conclusion, should you spend about 355,000 ringgit for the Volvo XC60, or if you're considering it, perhaps you are also considering the X3 X-Drive 30e, if I'm not mistaken. It's called basically a plug-in hybrid from the plug-in hybrid version of the X3, which costs somewhere about the 330,000 ringgit region, or the significantly more expensive brand new GLC 300, which is basically 430,000 ringgit for the CBU unit. It's once they introduce a CKD unit, that too is going to be about the 300,000 ringgit region. I would say that the X60 feels more very well put together. I think in terms of quality, it feels better than the BMW as well. Of course, all of this, we cannot really answer all of this without doing a head-to-head with the other cars. But my personal favorite is the XC60, simply because of performance, the interior spaciousness, the interior features, as well as the versatility that it has to offer. I think the performance versus the efficiency ratio is really good, and even charging up this thing, if you on a home charger, well, somewhere between 13 hours, I think Volvo says, but I know that you can do it quicker. And if you have access to a quick charger, I think 21 or 22 kilowatt charger, you can do it in about slightly over 5 hours. But the other thing is, it is also able to recharge as you are driving, as you go about your daily drives. It can recharge up to 50 and give you up to a 50 kilometer all-electric range. So in that sense, I think the XC60 checks all the boxes, and it does everything that I want in an SUV. So if I were to select one between those three, it will definitely be the XC60. And I know that the design of the car needs an update. This has been around for a while already, but it's still quite a looker, and I really like driving this thing. So thank you for watching. We are about to pick up the XC40, so look out for a review of that. Thank you.